now we're going to see if we have got Mr. John Kelly on the line. Is this the seventh sign of the apocalypse tonight?
Erica Lukes, is that you?
It is me, I think.
Well, you know, I thought it would be a good idea to switch out a little bit on the technology and come in over the phone line now for the next part of the interview.
You said that, didn't you? You had that intuitive feeling, and I didn't listen to you, and, you know, that'll teach me. But we actually do have some great people in the chat room tonight, and I know that people are listening. They've been listening patiently, and so I am very excited to have you here, and thank you for your patience. But I just want to tell my guest tonight on my very first, very late show on Blog Talk Radio about my guest tonight. John Kelly is somebody who everyone should know. He is an international clinician, a world-famous speech analyst, and he actually released key intelligence pertaining to the Iraq War 2 years in advance of shock and awe strikes against Baghdad in 2003. He was a former feature producer for CBS Radio, and he has done immense work not only with writing and being on Fox News, Coast to Coast AM, BBC London, UFO Digest, but he is a researcher, and he is doing things that I believe, and I think other people believe, will really help put research into a new place. And this is something we all need to know about. He has videos that are absolutely stellar. He frequently goes out to James Gilliland's ranch, which I want to go there, and maybe we could plan a little trip. And he can teach us all how to videotape, photograph these things, not only UFO but paranormal. So John, tell everybody again, just give us a little bit of background on the UFO and paranormal work that you've done, and help us understand how we can become better at connecting.
Well, my work in these fields emphasizes consciousness development, and I was a person who got involved in a very serious yogic meditation path as a young adult, and the classical yogic world is populated with all kinds of phenomena. It's just a really long litany of phenomena. I mean, people say that there are people who study the Vedas and say that there are descriptions of aircraft and spaceships in the Vedas, as if those people had high tech and so on. But if you, beyond any kind of nuts and bolts high tech, the concepts of cities and occult powers are part of the yoga culture. And so there's this expectation that people will have breakthrough experiences when they perform the practices intensively. And I'm not just talking about the hatha yoga that people enjoy, the athletic posture and stretching exercises that are very popular now, but I'm talking about the other 6 limbs that Patanjali talked about, like pratyahara, pranayama, et cetera, all these different inner practices, the internal practices. So when people do the internal practices as vigorously as they do the athletic work, they will be stimulating this very high potential within them. It's described as a cosmic potential. And so when the cosmic and the human get together, there's just a really big party that follows. So when we think about the UFO phenomenon, we think about the cosmic travelers and the cosmic entities that are living in this multidimensional universe with us. Then there's a simile. In other words, that when we feel that our inner compass is guiding us to understand the cosmic within us, that our lives and our experiences in the material universe begin to reflect more of those qualities. And so we begin to feel that it's as if there was a cosmic influence in our flow of our everyday experience, and that all these remarkable things happen. And so I had cited, in our earlier call, Dorothy Izett as a housewife who lived here in the Vancouver region and was very successful in taping UFOs on 8mm film, 30,000 feet of it, and her footage was scrutinized by professors at the University of British Columbia, and her work was widely seen on U.S. television in the 1980s. And again, this is just a family person who lives in their home, and when they look out the window, there's a UFO, and they film it. So we see that this flow of their lifestyle has this cosmic duty. That person is like a bridge to other consciousnesses, civilizations, whatnot. In the anthropological arena, people talk about the shaman as the bridge between society and the natural world or the universe and its potential. The medicine people that people talk about in Native American tradition, the medicine person as the bridge, that their beingness, their existence embodies this participation in more than one dimension of being, and that the society in those traditional viewpoints, the society with a good medicine person, the society would benefit. They would bring gifts to the society and for the advancement of the people and the betterment of their quality of life. So the contactee, the person who acts as the facilitator in some way, who maybe just through their storytelling or maybe by bringing others with them to their contact experiences or by filming and then publishing their work, they are also engaging in that kind of bridging work. You know, they are advancing the horizon of human understanding into new and exciting arenas with all kinds of different future potentials. But again, the potential that I emphasize the most is the impact on consciousness development, that the contact event serves as a springboard into higher understanding and expanded functionality of mental performance, behavioral performance improvements. And so I say that people will demonstrate some of the yogic cities. Their talents will emerge. This is part of the UFO literature, that people's talents, their painterly or musical or other talents, manifest in conjunction with their contact experiences. So this is aligned with what the yogis were saying, that the higher virtues can be awakened through contact with very intense consciousnesses. Other maybe more advanced beings can stimulate us in ways just through their presence to alert us, to excite within us growth and development. So this is where I see the greatest opportunity. As a person, I'm a person who emphasizes the spiritual over many other things, and so for me, that's where this leads. But it's entirely reasonable to say that in terms of material science, there are long-standing claims already. Philip Corso had written a book about fiber optics coming from UFO crash sites, if we recall his work.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
Absolutely. So there is an assumption that there are material science advances that will also, if they haven't already arrived there, that will come through these interactions. And people who are serious about creating legal and political structures that will support the long-term growth and development of human civilization interaction with other civilizations have authored works in the areas of exopolitics. So people have put forward all kinds of policies that describe a society that succeeds in those diplomatic interactions and that integration occurs. They envision universal societies and treaties and diplomacy and so on. Again, for me, that vision may be a little too far ahead of where I am in terms of my hands-on experience, but it's obvious from anyone who's familiar with the literature that greater thinkers have anticipated that there are going to be all kinds of potential benefits from that kind of growth and integration.
Isn't that amazing? And you mentioned something a little bit ago when you were talking about the talents that come into play and how you can just learn new areas about yourself. And it's funny, when I first had my sightings in 2013, that is when I picked up my first paintbrush and I began to just paint. I was very prolific at my art. I'd never done it before in my life, and I thought I could never do it. And I actually have been producing art, and I've sold it, and it was a very interesting thing for me. And when I would go into this, when I would paint, it was like this meditative process. And now that I'm listening to what you said, there might be a great connection there that I was not aware of.
That's a very interesting observation. As you say, in tandem with your demonstrated ability emerging in painting, that at the same time in your life you were also having you were having some form of contact that was awakening within you this notion of a whole other level of experience outside of what you would become accustomed to.
What were when you started to connect, what talents did you find, artistic talents?
Well, in my case, a lot of that had already manifested. So what really happened was it emphasized more of the consciousness talent type arena, which meant that I personally experienced, I got into the telepathic flow with the entities, and that facilitated my ability to anticipate the events so that I could tape them properly. instead of seeing something and then starting to tape, I would be in situations like I would be downtown next to the Addison Airport in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. I'd be wandering the streets with my camera rig assembled. I'd have a broadcast camera on a tripod, fully assembled, with extra telephoto, extra filters, and I'd be walking the streets, and then I would see a star in the daytime sky, and I would film it, and it would be like this really sensational, extremely well-produced shot of a UFO flying during daytime over Dallas. And
wow.
It's all. So I'm saying that it was when I talk about talent, it was this talent to be, in that case, it was like to be in the right place at the right time, and to know what to look for. Because when I went on that trip in 2010, I had been spending time with my colleague Les Merja, who is someone who I talk about in my most recent mini documentary, UFO Canyon. Les and I visit the UFO Canyon in British Columbia, where we have many adventures, and that's my latest mini documentary. I hope that we'll have a chance to talk a little bit more about that.
Yes.
But I had consulted with Les about what was his special skill, this contactee from Vancouver, who had so many videos he had shot of UFOs flying near or over City Hall. It was like this UFO corridor in the neighborhood around City Hall. It was quite an interesting setup, and he had all constant video. And he was able to facilitate for me more than once to help me to get on to his flow, so that we could have two camera shoots together and capture the stuff. It was really wild. And I asked him, I said, what's the thing when you see your daylight UFO? He said, it looks like a star in the daylight sky. That was the first indication. And so when I left for the trip, I had that in my mind. And so when I was wandering the streets with my rig assembled, for no other good reason, I saw the star in the daylight sky and I got the footage. It all added up. And so that's what I say, that is aligned with this notion of the creative potential that expresses through art, sculpture, design, and other kinds of skills and abilities. It's another type of a virtue. It's just a different part of the consciousness, and at the same time, it has great value because, as I stress, the most successful UFO videographers that I know are anticipating their contacts, and their equipment is set up ahead of time, so they're not catching the tail end of events, but rather they catch the very beginning all the way through, and it's all done, really, optimal. People aren't fumbling with their gear. It's all set up ahead of time. So this, I think, is this great virtue that is manifest in some of the people who are involved in this. It means that in their dream time, that they're having contacts in their dreams, or interactions with entities through this kind of consciousness-based contact. Consciousness-based contact is a very interesting notion in many ways because it appeals to concepts of efficiency and economy. If we consider the cost of operating fleets of vehicles and their personnel, staffing those vehicles, training, health insurance, food, housing, clothing, supply chains, to replacement parts, incredible costs when we do these things on a human scale. And so if we thought about fleets of objects, flying around the planet, what is the cost of operations to keep those things flying? It's incredible.
Right.
So it would seem to me that, in other words, that orchestrating these physical contacts that can be taped it uses a lot of resources, whereas if people are beginning to have intuitive contact, and they're able to, it's like they're having a clear perception of what that, when that's happening, they understand it, like they're aware of it, then that's much greater efficiency and economy. You don't have to have, what replacement parts are required? Well, there aren't any. So it seems, in other words, that, just to conclude briefly, is that it seems, in other words, that the physical contacts become the platform to bond at the telepathic level. This is a measurable behavioral attribute of the contactees with whom I study.
Isn't that amazing? It's so hard to, when I started to, I've always had a very interesting connection with the paranormal, and I've always had strange things happen around me, and I think some people are just wired that way, and maybe it's because they're obviously they're more intuitive, but then they're more open to having these experiences. And I think that for me, when I started to have all of these sightings, it's like you go through this period in your mind where you feel like even you really second guess yourself. Is this really happening? And then you do the logical thing where you're telling yourself, well, why would they be appearing in airspace over the international airport, or A, B, C, D? Why can't other people see these? And then you begin to doubt yourself. And how do you? Did you ever have to deal with that?
Oh, certainly. I say fundamentally this is born of isolation. That we were speaking to a question earlier about people's natural instinct to convene around topics to find solutions. It's normal human behavior for people to gather and pool their resources to try to solve some problem, whatever that might be. And so breaking through this isolation, which is widely considered by contemporary philosophers as a problem of modern living in modern Western societies, even living in highly densified cities, is that we have less bonding with our neighbors than we may have had in rural times. And so isolation is one of the contributing factors. And what you're doing here, broadcasting, is playing a role in breaking down those barriers and helping people to find more peace within themselves when they are attempting to address these questions. I think it is important to a measure of self-reflectivity and self-awareness around our decisions and our interpretations is a constant need for that. Self-awareness. We are called to analyze and investigate our interpretations of our perceptions and our assumptions. But at the same time, some things, like gravity. There's these science headlines now about gravity waves, but we've all been working within a gravitational arena without being able to see gravity itself for a long time. Mm-hmm. Like gravity's invisible to the naked eye, and the electron as well is. Although this platform we're on now relies intensely on electricity, few of us have ever seen an electron, I think. So you see how it is that in the absence of absolute certitude, we continue to persist and we continue to progress, and this is normal. And so we can accept, we can embrace those outlooks that support other practical efforts in a whole variety of fields. We can embrace that and bring it to play in this contact phenomena research environment as well. That it's okay to move forwards with imperfect knowledge. Our ancestors have been doing it for a long time, and we continue to do it in all these other fields. We're playing with all kinds of crazy equipment and technologies with apparent very limited understanding of what we're doing in major industries, including the energy industry, particularly in the energy industry. We appear to have limited understanding of what we're doing, and yet we continue to persist. So can we have as much permission for people to pursue these questions as well? I think that at a minimum, people gathering in small groups, making friends with folks and spending time with them and cultivating those relationships helps to mitigate, again, this isolation factor. Having someone to talk to about the experiences and to reflect on our doubts, shortcomings, and whatnot is an important socialization. And in the absence of that, I think there is a weakness. We are not as strong without having access to resources. So again, the internet has facilitated so much conversation, such a positive thing, that so many people have been able to have conversations with each other about the questions that they have otherwise only been able to access through books, or when an author may visit town, or when Hollywood releases a film or a TV series. Obviously, the popularity of the X-Files tells us that the public has a great appetite for understanding in these areas. I just say that they would find out more if they went outside than sitting on their couch. That's all.
Well, strange things do happen on the couch, I have to say. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, I will, you know what I'm saying. Anyway, that I think that, for me, I see a real dumbing down, unfortunately. I mean, the internet is wonderful, and it does allow us to connect to people in seconds all over the world, but it's also, if you don't really come into it from a grounded perspective, you really become mindless in what you're doing. And I see that with, the iPhones or smartphones and different things we lose this personal interaction, and in doing that, we lose that intuitive ability to connect to nature, to connect to other human beings, to, it's just an interesting time that we're in right now.
So as you say, there are these ironic situations. We're closer than we ever were, and we're more distant, from each other than we could possibly imagine at the same time. And yet we're trying to make sense of things. I think again that my work emphasizes that my success in collecting videos and being on the scene for all these different things entirely relied upon the support of my friends and colleagues. There were numerous people like Les Merja, Dwana Paul, James Gilliland. They played pivotal roles in getting me to locations where I could do the filming. Without them, it wouldn't have happened. And so I really, for me, my path always involves, I'm always accompanied by friends and colleagues pursuing these questions. It's not just my interest in this, but it's our collective social experience around it, and that we are becoming, in that way, we could say that because we are co-witnesses. When Erica and John go out in the field one day with their cameras and friends and see the UFOs and film them and such, then we'll have this shared experience that will be part of our legacy of our relationships. It will be a special characteristic that we were all there when something happened. We were all witness to something and part of something. And I say within that are the foundations of a new society. The people of the experience, their minds are shaped in a way that is different than those who had yet to encounter such things, and while they were consciously awake. There are, in other words, initiatory overtones in the natural environment. Is initiating us through contact with different entities that reside within nature, and we are being culturally and otherwise informed by those contacts. And it is, as I say, it's contributing to the formation of a new society, and the established institutions, the visionaries within those institutions anticipate this, and they foresee the need for their institutions to adapt. And the institutions that can't adapt and accommodate what's coming, what nature is serving up, will not be able to, they will not move forwards. So if we want to become the people of the future, we have to assertively engage, from my point of view, engage the phenomena through direct action.
So what would you, if you're talking to just a regular MUFON field investigator that doesn't look at the bigger consciousness aspect, I mean, and I think a lot of them do, but I think that, what would you tell somebody that just wants to grab a video camera and go out in the field and hope that a UFO pops up?
Well, it seems to me that if it's going to happen, it will happen. And if they have a little bit of equipment, then they will have more than just their story. They'll have instrumental evidence and support. And if they have friends with them, they'll have witnesses. So I say that it's from the flip side of someone who went out to see what would happen and had a whole bunch of stuff happen. What surprised me was how easy it was to engage in something that, in my mind, was so distant. Many of our cultural reference points talk to us, for example, about influential structures that we don't have any direct access to, like traditional concepts of heaven, for example. Heaven is some place that's not here. It's like there's a distance between us and heaven, and we only, we only cross that gap under special circumstances. And I say that the UFO contact is like that. In our minds, it's like this gap as if it was between Earth and heaven. And the big surprise is that it was like as close as our neighbors, and it was more about us tuning into it. Kind of a funny counter, argument to our expectation would be that this stuff is so dry and thin, take a million years for anything to find anything. And what really happens is, like, this stuff is as close as your next door neighbor, and there's a party going on next door, and you should go over and check it out.
You're absolutely correct, and I believe it is, and I think it's interesting because I live in Utah, and we know there are some strange places in Utah, like Skinwalker Ranch, different areas, and it's funny when you hear some of these researchers talk. They're trying to figure out, okay, is this something that has been here with us the whole time? Is this an ET influence? What is it, and where do we begin to differentiate between those two, and is there a difference? And that's what's so fascinating and perplexing for me. I love it because I don't know, and I want to know more, and I want to know how to investigate all of this.
Well, there are things that happen during contact that challenge fundamental notions of reality, like laws of physics type stuff that we're indoctrinated in. And so the structures that we bring, the conceptual structures that we bring to apply to the question are challenged when data that challenges the fundamental assertion of the question emerges. But it seems to me that in this arena, there's an unlimited sort of morphology and typology list of things that people are encountering. If we just think about UFO, there are many different types of contacts. And the novelty doesn't seem to wear off. Even in high traffic areas like Mount Adams, every night was different. There was general perception that every night was pretty much a different night. Whatever the tide brought in was always something different, and the novelty never wore off. So I say that in an arena, in other words, where seemingly there's infinite novelty, our conceptual means of understanding, taking those different, the multicolored fabric that's coming at us and pulling all the different threads, we may have to come up with new ways of looking at the question, because as I say, that the UFO phenomena doesn't seem to be running out of novel ways to deliver experiences to people. It's always something new.
Have you ever had an experience that you would view as negative in all of this?
I've had many negative experiences and difficult experiences in my life. This certainly wasn't the most difficult experience of my life. This was the easiest, it would seem, for me. But maybe I endured a lot of hardship in other ways, and that made my passage a little smoother than that of others. I respect the testimony of people who've encountered difficulty with these questions. I've interviewed contactees who claim abduction and medical experiments, very torture. It's profoundly disturbing to consider that people are suffering like this. So I'm aware of and I respect that. But I think that negative. On the spiritual path, it's like this. The Buddha is meditating before he gets his nirvana, and then he has this crisis that emerges, and it's as if he has like the god of death and the armies of death coming after him to destroy him, and he has to endure this. It's a condition. It's like a test, and he has to endure this state until his mind changes. And when his mind changes and the fear of death loses its hold on him, he becomes liberated. This is this concept in the spiritual path. So this perception of difficulty, in other words, and mortality, is addressed in the intense spiritual practice lifestyle. And so, however those difficulties are delivered to us, fascist extraterrestrials who want to abduct us, or who knows what, these are all kinds of problems, potential problems. I haven't personally, had those problems, but as I say, my life path was fraught with challenges, and that's characteristic of someone who's interested in high pursuits. Challenges exist. My field work has not created any fatalities. I have no injuries to show other than something from my own stupidity. But I was never injured through close contacts. I was informed and educated through my close contacts. I think that UFO Canyon shows portraiture grade photography as well as high tech night imaging of stuff that's near the camera. I mean, you want proximity. Watch the first minute of UFO Canyon. It's like you can't get any closer than that. And there were no casualties or injuries reported from that. So I say that, in other words, our fear of injury, our fear of death, informs decision making around questions of risk and adventure. And for those who embrace the fear and identify with it more than they do the spirit of the song of the heart that calls them to go out to adventure, then those people, they get, they live with that. And the people who answer the call of the heart have all the breakthrough experiences, and they're heroic people because they're the people of courage. They felt their courage was greater than their instinct to go into fear. Their sense of honor and dignity withstood the buffets of the psychology of fear and the fear of death, the fear of injury, and so on. So life is full of risk, but great adventure belongs to the brave, and that spirit of courage, which is so pervasive. There's so many courageous people around us in our society. That spirit of courage serves us in this field as well. It gives us the strength to persist in the absence of greater understanding on our way to greater understanding, on our way to discovery.
That is so profound and beautiful, and to me that is something that I strive to. I hope that I can find that peace and that confidence and inner knowing. It's almost like you just have to really just, you really do, this sounds really trite, but you do have to go with the flow. And I remember a profound experience for me that I always have to go back to when I'm struggling with different things and then thinking about the negative aspects and getting caught up in that kind of negative talk that doesn't allow me to really move forward on a spiritual path, and then also with this pursuit in my life. But I was in Costa Rica, and I was swimming, and I was trying to body surf, which is really frightful if you know the way I roll. But I remember getting kind of sucked into a wave and having this moment where, oh my God, I'm going to die. I am going to die, and I got sucked under, and then I had this peaceful thought come into my mind that just said, you just have to let go. And it was such a profound moment for me, because not only was it in that moment and a survival instinct, but I remember coming out of that and thinking, this is how I have to live my life. And we always bang our head against a wall and we struggle, but if I try to remember that moment and that feeling of utter freedom and surrender, it was really profound.
So the crisis facilitates growth and development, and this is a classical theme. The Bhagavad Gita is a famous Sanskrit work, and it talks about the crisis of the hero and the overcoming of the crisis to achieve something, to achieve a victory under desperate circumstances. So we are called upon, like that as heroes in our own lives to answer the call of courage, to answer the spirit of the heart, and to pursue the higher good. Like yogic psychology says, we have all this cosmic potential. I mean, we have all this incredible breakthrough potential. Why can't we just be living a life filled with breakthroughs? I mean, that would seem to be our potential. So why don't we just do that?
That would be nice. I would like that. I'm working on it. Hey, if I could just have 5 minutes at a time, 5 minutes in a 24-hour period, I'd be really excited.
Sure. Yeah. So this is the thing. I think we have to experience gives us the visceral feeling for something. If you have an encounter with great art, and you see a great work, and you're in the presence of a great work, there are all these visceral qualities that can't be necessarily transmitted through a book or a television screen. When you're with the artists themselves and the work is being produced, that's an experience that can't really be packaged up and sold, at Kmart. So there are what they call the inimitable or the ineffable. Direct action, direct experience educates and informs us in ways that are otherwise not possible. And if we pursue that, then and cultivate that, and we become strong in those ways, then then great things can happen. Great works can be accomplished.
Oh, that's just, it's amazing. I'm so grateful that you're here tonight, and I'm grateful that you have the good sense to just kind of roll with it, which is what we're talking about. Tonight was a prime example of that one, but we're going to take a quick break, a 3-minute break, and I'm going to attempt to roll some music that my friend and just a beautiful musician wrote and allowed me to use tonight. His name is John Piper. We're going to play that. We'll take a 3-minute break, and then I will be back with more fascinating and enlightening conversations with John Kelly. Thanks for tuning in tonight. I'm here with a man, again, that I was saying at the beginning of the show, to start with, and then the second beginning of the show tonight, John Kelly, and he is a videographer. He's a journalist. He is a leader and somebody that we should all know. His works are seen. He's got a YouTube page that has over 1 million hits. Is that right, John?
Yeah, over 1 million views. I've been working hard, reaching the public with my message.
And that
so I've been very successful. Very successful and fortunate. I think that that I had the support of the major broadcasters who took an interest in my work when I became involved in radio and so on. It helped a lot. I gained a major advantage because I had access to a lot of airtime.
And it's great, but you are very smooth. And I noticed when I was first introduced to you when you were interviewing Charles Lamoureux, up in your neck of the woods, and he is I'm just listening to you talk. You know so much, you're so intelligent, but you have this inner peace, and it was very captivating. And I started to really research you and your videos. Everything you do is something that we should all know about. Tell me about your photographic and videographer. How can I go get equipment to do what you're doing?
Well, my work emphasized a lot of just using off-the-shelf equipment and things that were within the budget of the average working person. So in terms of gear, what I'm using now, I did a lot of still photography for maybe 4 or 5 years in the early part of the millennium, just using Panasonic Lumix series cameras, which has Leica lenses, German glass, and high-precision Japanese electronics. I found this to be a very high-quality piece of equipment, and the results, my best photographic works were shot through a Lumix camera. And then I moved by 2007, 2008. I sort of had to make a decision whether I would go to DSLR or I would go into video, and I saw that I would reach audiences through video faster than I would through still photography. It was great with online video being such a high demand. And so I began to develop video, and I chose the Panasonic, again, AG-DVC-30, which is their, I think it's the last of their zero-lux night cameras. It was built in part to market as a portable security camera, like a portable CCTV security camera for use by field investigators like police. That was part of the market they targeted the build for. But what happened was that in terms of consumer electronics, governments in the post-9/11 era began to put more and more stress on manufacturers to not provide extra night vision powers to the public. The police in cities didn't want to compete for night vision powers with members of the public. So they didn't want the public to have a tactical advantage. And so major manufacturers began to drop, like Sony dropped night shot from a lot of their cameras, for example. It's not so easy to find. It used to be really easy to find. But a lot of the cameras don't offer that. Panasonic, I think, completely dropped out of offering zero-lux night shot after the DVC-30. And as I say, and as someone who's worked in night vision distribution, I know there's all kinds of pressure on those products. So AG-DVC-30 is a tape-based camera with a triple sensor array, and the triple sensor is important. Any 3 CCD or 3 MOS camera offers triple sensor redundancy, And those familiar with the UFO literature will understand that one of the common critiques of photography and film is instrumental failure is the cause of the artifact. And in a triple sensor system, the likelihood of all three sensors failing at the same time is so remote. It's almost like having three different cameras. So you have three cameras in one apparatus, or the statistical equivalent, and that gives you great powers. To talk about the authenticity of the footage. All three sensors are all working. That's why you see the image, because three eyes registered the signal. So AGDVC30 from Panasonic, you can still find them used on eBay. Buy them with low hours, like 35 hours or less, and get them for $200 or $300. I paid a lot more for mine, but you can still find those cameras. It's a great piece of equipment. It's tape-based, so not as easy to use as something with that shoots to digital files. And then I supplement that with the Pulsar Recon X550, which is a very high sensitivity digital night vision equipment, but it's built as a piece of sporting goods. It's because its status in terms of paperwork and bureaucracies is it's the equivalent of a binocular. In other words, I can transport that across international borders without any consequences, because it's like I brought my binoculars with me. That's the standing of that sports optic. Whereas when we get into tube-based gear, you're starting to get into a whole different realm of legality, and that is highlighted when you try to cross international borders with that equipment. So I always recommend people to get the digital night vision, but get a decent piece of equipment with a nice build, so that when you take it out in the field and it took you 10 hours to get to the location, that your gear turns on and works all night and doesn't fail in the field because it was build quality issues. Pulsar, I think, is an excellent build. Their latest X870 scope offers an OLED display and all kinds of precision. I had an Australian user who wrote in a review on it. There's a review on newsinsideout.com where I cited him. He said it was like this was the best handheld portable night vision experience that he'd ever had. And so this arena, the digital and particularly the quality build stuff from Pulsar is a great opportunity, because working people can afford these scopes, and the level of surveillance that it affords is incredible. Like having seen UFO Canyon, you saw some of the Pulsar night vision footage.
And it is beautiful. It is stunning.
Now that's shot in like crystal clear near desert conditions, so it's incredibly clear skies to begin with. But the populations of celestial objects, like the shot of the Pleiades, has got like 1,000 stars in it. It's like so you really have penetrative views. What equipment doesn't have compared to the tube-based scopes like your Gen 3, PVS-7 type equipment is it doesn't have the 40-degree field of view. So wide field of views and one-times magnification, that's a common attribute on a tube-based scope. And that wide field of view is valuable because you don't have to move as much to survey a larger part of the sky. It's only 40 degrees. It's not 360 degrees, but my scope is only 5 degrees. So typically having a spotter or a spotter with a bigger instrument was a big help for me. Otherwise, I could only see a very narrow field at a time, and to cover the sky with that would take a long time. So this is the trade-off that people can be aware of if they're considering digital versus tube-based scopes, is the field of view. In my case, the DVC30 is, because it's such a workhorse camera, it's the Ghost Hunters camera from the famous sci-fi series.
Oh, yeah.
That's found on television sets. So it has all these attachment points, including there's lots of options to upgrade the glass in the front. So what I did was I got a Schneider Optics 180-degree ultra-wide angle adapter, and I used that as a zero-lux all-sky camera. And again, if you saw UFO Canyon, you saw the all-sky shots from that setup. Did the all-sky shots look compelling?
Oh, my God, they were absolutely amazing.
The great benefit of the all-sky shot, again, it's not 360 degrees, but the likelihood of tracking phenomena from beginning of observation till the end is really good. And by using a stationary platform, you get all kinds of information about trajectory and performance in flight that telephoto imaging can't provide due to different things like camera movement, and so on. It's typical for people to become optically confused, even with the naked eye in observation. There's all kinds of neurological phenomena like jitter within the eye itself that causes people to think that what they're looking at is wiggling. So the answer to this is to have an all-sky imager on site, because it's unambiguous what the trajectory is with the all-sky imager. If the thing's turning, if it's wiggling, whatever, the all-sky imager is going to see it. So having some telephoto and having wide-angle views on site, this setup for me has worked very well. This is a backpack portable system with two cameras and at least one tripod or a clamp and a tripod, and I can take that and I can do meaningful data collection, like at a whole bunch of locations, and just run off batteries. And it didn't cost the moon, and I'm in there collecting the data. I'm using the equipment. I'm not just getting all involved with super expensive stuff that I'm also really scared of using because it might break and stuff.
Right.
I have field tough gear, like the Panasonic. The body's made out of magnesium. It's
oh my gosh.
It's a magnesium alloy, so that thing is so rough and tough. I mean, I've been using these things for hundreds of hours a year, and it's they just keep on going. So that's the kind of thing you want out in the field is quality precision equipment with good builds that withstands climbing mountains and dropping bags and whatever can happen out there. All kinds of things can happen, but it's all. I targeted things that were affordable. I worked in the tech industry. In distribution, I worked for the world's largest computer components distributor in the 90s. So I was reading white papers on 3CC technology. I knew how highly touted those systems were for professional and scientific imaging. And so when I was trying to make a decision about what kind of equipment could I bring to Mount Adams and that hot spot where James Gilliland is, what kind of equipment could I bring to add to the mix, to improve the quality of the shooting? I identified that Panasonic's camera, the DVC-30, was the right piece of gear, and then to add on to that was the Pulsar Recon. And with that equipment, I was, that's where my catalog was shot. I think I have meaningful footage, and I have redundant shots in many cases, matching footage from two cameras with the soundtracks and all. So it's worked out very well. And then those packages, again, instead of paying $2,000 today, you pay maybe $200 or $300 for the DVC-30, and maybe you need to spend about $1,000 on the night vision. But that's not the $1,500 is not out of reach for working people.
No, it isn't. And I know that for me, being the state director, I have an amazing assistant state director here in Utah, and that is something that we talk about every day. How are we going to get good equipment? How are we going to do good field studies? I believe that there is stuff going on here all the time, and if I have that great equipment, I can really get good footage like you have, and you're a role model to me. I had mentioned, earlier when we were talking about the sighting that we had here 2 days ago that my friend Pat from Fringe Radio was talking about, where he actually, he's a ham operator, and he heard the flight control tower from the Salt Lake International Airport talking with a pilot coming in, seeing a mile-wide bright orange craft above Nephi, Utah. And, if I had that equipment, I would be out there in 2 seconds and really seeing if I could get stuff, because chances are I could film some amazing footage.
Absolutely. So again, one of the important arguments for night vision is that night vision relies on the infrared spectrum, and for most of us, our visual field is limited to visible light. So when we add a whole extra wavelength or field of wavelengths to our visual arena, the chances of seeing something just multiplied. If we were fishing and we only had the one pond that we could fish from, and you suddenly add an extra body of water, the chance of catching fish start to go up. And so the night vision is like that. It's when the vision is extended so far, then the probability of seeing things increases dramatically. And that's what I say. This is one of the opportunities of our time. The technology for night vision, particularly the digital technology, which is legal hassle-free, and affordable, that stuff is within the grasp of the consumers. It's just, in terms of where most people find it, it's marketed to hunters. And so folks who are active hunters will typically have that type of equipment to aid them, in their forays through the forest. But you go to sporting goods stores and you look in those sections, this type of optic is typically stored there. The other place people find these are the major camera retailers, B&H. I can think of quite a few others that I've done business with. They will stock these things, or people who are consultants. Ed Grimsley is a person who's well known for setting people up with tube-based scopes, and I've had a business consulting and supporting people all over the world with digital scopes.
That's incredible. I mean, this really is something that we all need to do, because I believe that, like, I was saying earlier, like you say, when you connect and when you have this equipment, you can see things. I mean, there's not a question. So sometimes, when I talk to other investigators involved with MUFON and things, and they've never had a sighting, I wonder how, let's get them out there with some of this equipment. Let's get them to maybe do some meditation and go out in the field and see what they can find, because I think that is such a great way to have a UFO experience.
Closing the gap from the abstract to the practical. I think that this field needs to be grounded in experience. Practical realities are valuable, and I think that this equipment is part of that. This isn't in the books. It's not on your TV set. It's something's happening in your neighborhood, and it's a part of our natural environment that we are called to participate in. At least some of us are called to participate in. And furthermore, as you described it, the bar to access is not incredibly high. The special qualifications is a mind that thinks, a heart that beats, lungs that breathe, and 2 hands, 2 feet. I mean, what else do we need? There's not much more required of us. Is just take ourselves and get a little bit involved, swim in the water, and then let's talk about the ocean. Having swum around it a little bit and lived next to it, and and all those kinds of things. Let's have a conversation, a meaningful and authentic discussion about our relationship with the environment and its phenomena from a meaningful perspective, an experiential perspective. I think that will bring all of our qualities, all our good qualities, will be brought to bear on the question when it becomes something that's not just a formula on a chalkboard, but in fact an experiential, tangible, as meaningful as our relationships with our neighbors and our communities.
Absolutely. I could not agree more, and that's how I feel. That's where I feel I need to go with this, and hopefully if I can maybe bridge kind of some of those gaps with MUFON and things that is something that I feel I need to do, because that is where we need to go, absolutely. But, when you're out there and you're videotaping this phenomenon, do you ever look at any EMF readings, or do you have any other types of equipment that you're using, instruments that you're using to measure things?
No, that is the limit of instrumentation. It emphasizes optical and audio recording, and that's it. That's all I'm relying on. I've been in field situations where people had other gear, but because from my perspective, all the physical events serve as springboards for consciousness. The real goal is to get the consciousness link up. Because the consciousness link up, you see, the EMF reader won't tell us when the phenomenon is going to come. It won't tell us to set the gear up ahead of time. But the consciousness link up will do all that, and more. And so I think it's all about that, using the tools to springboard the consciousness. For me, the cameras are enough to facilitate that. But it's not to say that there aren't continually new innovations in equipment that are coming around. And again, a place like Mount Adams, every year there's people traveling there with new equipment, and we see different types of technology being applied. But at the end of the day, I say that if the data collection doesn't excite the inner person, to greater insight and breakthrough, aha moments of understanding, then it hasn't happened. And so, that could be, the technology could be as simple as banging 2 stones together for some people. The consciousness being the way it is. They didn't need a lot, and for other people, you need a 50-acre institution with 1,000 people and all kinds of gear. I mean, it just depends on your mindset. Some of us need a big push, and others are just a light touch will do.
Well, and I'm thinking I'm probably the banging the two stones together, because clearly I can't operate Blog Talk. Oh, Lord have mercy. But that's okay, So maybe technology is not my friend. This is one of the lessons I've learned, and I will be grabbing my stones tonight. I don't know. It's so interesting, though, and I know for me, too, and I feel being involved in MUFON, I mean, there are all these things that we have to, we have to collect good data, and we have to, do this in a quote-unquote scientific manner. For me, though, personally, having had these interactions, I don't care like you say, I don't care what's going on, because this is something that I can't describe, that is just something so real and profound that I don't need to have that. But it is interesting to bridge those gaps. But let's talk about your new project with UFO Canyon, because this is so phenomenal. I can't wait for everyone to see it. What's happening?
Well, UFO Canyon is my latest mini-documentary on my subscriber channel, News Inside Out Plus, which is on the newsinsideout.com website. This is my pilot arena for launching long-form projects that historically have been shown can't be produced for YouTube. So by circumstances, I have taken my work and put it behind a paywall. And this offers an economic platform because, of course, my research, just like everybody else's, costs money. So people can support my research and my future projects by subscribing and receiving access to the proprietary and exclusive content from my libraries. I tell stories through that channel that can't, practical terms can't be told through other channels, because particularly because of the political atmosphere around what I'm doing. So, UFO Canyon is the latest mini-documentary. Runs for 24 minutes, and it takes the viewer with John and Les Mergia out to this remote land here in British Columbia, in the region where the lake monster is attributed, in a region with all kinds of history of UFOs, and we're on private land where there are live shows most nights, and the footage in that video shows that the phenomena enter into the canyon, and they appear against the rocky backdrop of the canyon walls. They're not just in the sky anymore. We're in a live environment with conscious entities, and they're on camera doing their thing. I mean, what did you think of that shot where you saw the flash against the canyon wall?
It was incredible. I mean, it's just, all of it is so staggering to me, and I would really encourage all of my listeners tonight to support you and go to your site and watch this. It was beautiful and just perplexing and cool, and I want to go with you the next time you're going out anywhere.
Oh, I see. You're coming to BC now, so you can be a part of it. Yeah, I think that these opportunities are very real, and I think that we are emboldened. When we receive a care package from someone else who's out in the field, it emboldens us to further our participation, because we go, wow, like some people are knocking down some of the walls that we felt were holding us back. They're out there doing it, and I want to be with them. In my heart, I feel like I'm one of those people. I'm on the forefront with them, and I belong with them on the forefront. I think that these cultural artifacts that come from the contactees and experiencers can really excite that within us, and I think it's a positive thing. There are a lot of things that are happening right now in our world that aren't working out so good, but this seems to be one of the areas where good results are coming consistently. And so this is something I see magnifying and growing. By sharing something about something here in the region, really I hope to encourage people to go to take more interest in what's happening in their own region. These ideas of the hot spots. I always say, the hot spots are within us. It's within us. It's the places within our hearts and our minds that are touching and awakening, interacting, that are creating these opportunities. And so the UFO Canyon is a metaphor. Because of its private nature and so on, it's unlikely that the millions will ever be able to go there. But but it's most certain in my mind that there's many UFO canyons and UFO mountains and UFO deserts on the planet, and that people will take a second look at what's in their area. They will find some really valuable treasures. Some of the places I've been to that were phenomenal were really, Artesia, New Mexico. Jim Stike, my friend who runs UFONV.com, is an educational site for gear users. I interviewed him in 2010 on that road trip when I was in Dallas. We made it all the way out to Roswell. And so due south of Roswell is Artesia, which is an oil industry town, and it has a major institutional training center for police. I think those are the two attributes, two major employers in Artesia. Otherwise, it's just scrubby desert, and we're surrounded by javelinas, which are the wild hogs. And we're out there sky watching at night, and Jim took us to his humble home, to his backyard where he has most of his sky watching, and we just walked into the backyard, and as soon as we walked, we looked up, and there was this beautiful light in the twilight traversing the sky at a low angle to the horizon, like as if it was in the neighborhood, and we just watched it and watched it fly by and go out. We had a sighting just by walking into the guy's backyard. He's in touch with this. He's got his night vision, and he's been filming for years and showing people how to mod their gear and set up, reviewing different types of equipment. And he's just your local guy down the street in Artesia for all intents and purposes. But he's got this other dimension that he's in touch with, and he helped. I got into his backyard and saw the thing, saw what he saw. So it's happening like that. UFO Canyon is again something that is intended to be a longer format. I foresee 80 minutes. I have a huge catalog. I've got dozens and dozens of hours of night footage. I've 5 years of research up there. So what I showed in UFO Canyon in 24 minutes was just a taste, just a sample of the content that waits to yet be published. Most of my content is unpublished. I have a very large library of footage from these different locations, and most of it's never been published. So my goal is to publish long format features, and again, subscribers can support me in my creative efforts to get this done and complete it and get these to the next level from the conceptual, from John's desktop to bigger budget and bigger opportunity. This is grassroots cultural, creation right here. UFO Canyon, UFO Mountain, the other titles at newsinsideout.com. It's the News Inside Out Plus channel where people can subscribe and help me to complete the work, help me to tell my story, help me to share the footage, and to do more meaningful research with other great colleagues. As I hope to make a trip to Utah this year and meet with you and go with you to a remote location where I've been invited to camp out. It has a longitudinal relationship with the Skinwalker Ranch, and it has a reputation for high energy experiences.
Okay, let's make it happen, because I would love to do that, and I think we all need to support people like you. There are people, I think, unfortunately, in our field that don't have good quality research, and they try to make a little money here and there. And to me, to have somebody like you with your collection, with all of everything that this is so important to support people like you. I'm totally down, and I am subscribing, and I am going to spread the word because I love it. And I know that my assistant state director, who's listening to my show right now, is going to be all over that, and we're going to get some good equipment. And then when you come out here to do that investigation, we are going to collect some great evidence. I can't wait. Let's make that happen.
Good synergy, good collective effort. This is, I see the future coming, from these sort of things. So this is, I believe in this, and I think that people with their friends, this is accessible. This is like sports. This is like amateur baseball. Everyone, every community's got a softball team. Well, people can be meeting and enjoying the same kind of vigorous activities around these contact phenomena. It's as accessible and certainly very educational.
How do you, when you, no doubt in your life you deal with people that would look at this and just think, oh, my Lord, do the eye roll, little green man, let's get your tinfoil hat on and, call down the mothership. How do you react to that? I mean, I'm sure you're just so easygoing, you just let it roll. But for me, I have a hard time with that. So give me some words of advice.
Well, I am a person who was not afraid to break with consensus on a whole bunch of issues and to be visible publicly with claims that at the time may have seemed an incredible stretch of reason. But and in the course of doing so, I was bombarded with all kinds of criticism and other problems. I'm speaking specifically about being a person who would do things like report on wars before they start and identify serial killers before they confess, and these kinds of severe kinds of investigative work.
Wow.
I took a lot of heat along the way, and I had to have sort of a values priorities table in my mind that would provide a reference about criticism and what benefit could possibly arise from my pursuit of information, knowledge, and sharing, and so on. And it occurred to me on each occasion that the benefit would be greater than the short-term difficulty, and that the dogs that were barking by the side of the road would change their tune over the course of time. And it's really psychological. This relates to notions of perception. What Krishna said to Arjuna on the battlefield in the Bhagavad Gita was that all you see before you is this temporary situation. This is a story about someone who's facing all their relatives in a war, and they're going to have to fight to the death. And this guy's saying, I don't want to kill my family members, I want to go home. And Krishna's saying, no, you got this duty, and I'll explain to you why you're here. So in this moment of doubt, everything just sort of seems a certain way. And this is this Maya, is what Krishna was saying to Arjuna. He said, this is the Maya, this is the illusion that keeps everything going here, that we have days, nights, winters, and summers. And all these differences here is actually what keeps the system going, so people can come here and learn, and their souls can grow and so on. And it's this enticement, to be entrapped in to perceive the temporary as some kind of permanent situation. This enticement is entirely misleading. Hollywood film titles, endless summer. I mean, have you ever heard of that term?
Mm-hmm.
And, I mean, this notion of infinite, Christmas or something, right? It's like
oh Lord,
enticement
help me now.
Everything's going to stay the same forever and ever and ever. Actually, everything's changing all the time, so it's entirely illusory. So the hardships and the crises don't last forever. But the crisis, meeting a crisis is the call to duty for someone who has the psychology of the heroic psychology is not a stand-down person; it's a stand-up person. They engaged with the crisis and they work through the crisis. And they find in the working through of it that they had greater capacity that only came to bear when they got engaged. And that capacity, when it was latent, was their consciousness was completely disconnected from it. They didn't know their great strength until they applied it. And so this whole point, this whole coaching session on the great battlefield in the Gita is all about you don't even know who you are. Who are you to talk about limitations? You don't even understand yourself and your potential. You won't know it until you overcome your fear. When fear loses its hold on you and your heart speaks, your heart will guide you to do something great, and you will not think about the fear at that moment. You will be immersed in the greatness of what you're doing, and your consciousness will only know that. So this is this classical message from ancient societies, and we're still trying to learn some of these lessons here. All of these impasses don't have permanent status. They only possess a temporary status. And behind the scenes, everything is changing. Let's take a side journey into another political issue of the day, which is the cannabis issue. In many of the United States, the states legislatures have met and decided to legalize a substance that still has no federal standing. In Canada, the federal government has proclaimed its intention to legalize it across the country. Now, 5 years ago, very few people would have imagined that Canada would be getting involved in that. Or 25 years ago, no one would have thought that. But behind the scenes, things were changing. And we became aware of the change when the Prime Minister, the leader of our country, came out and said, this is what we're doing. But he didn't just wake up one morning and decide to do that. It was things were changing behind the perception, behind what we could see. There was this constant change. Behind this perception of the static, of the immutable, was this intense growth and change was constantly going on. So I say to you that, like the dogs that are barking along the side of the road, your duty is to march down that road. It's not to engage with the shrill noise, the circus that might surround you from time to time. It's to continue your march. That your duty is to reach your destination, and that destination, in these cases, is to understand our relationship with these phenomena that we are having tangible and instrumental experiences with. There's a gap in our consciousness between what we're experiencing and what we understand, and so what we are called upon to gently, formulate the different connections in our mind and to live in a way that harmonizes with and empowers our connectedness with our environment and our opportunities for growth and change.
Oh, that is amazing. I feel like, honestly, this has been the best therapy session for me. Because what you were saying to me personally, just to be selfish for a minute, is so timely, and it is so meaningful. And I think it's for me getting into this field, always being on the periphery, but then really getting into it full force, you tend to get pulled into the negative aspects of things, and to really keep the dogs at bay and to keep marching through things so you can make great change. That is such a beautiful thought, and that really that really resonates with me tonight especially. So thank you for that. And I know everybody listening has that same, we all have our struggles in our lives, and we get sidetracked, and then we have our, our ego kind of chiming in, and then you lose perspective. And so it's really important to hear those words. Thank you.
Well, yeah, and thank you for providing this forum where we can have these meetings and where these conversations can be held. Without your effort, where would I be speaking? I'd be on the street corner standing on a box somewhere. Who would be listening to me then?
You'd be out in UFO Canyon.
I'd be at UFO Canyon. That's it.
Exactly, with your good gear. But it is so cool to me to meet people like you, and then Charles, and just people from all over the world that have this same mindset, that there's this connection and the desire to do something really meaningful and lasting, and to change the world. And I really believe that we can all do that. I believe that we're at this very pivotal point where that can happen.
Yeah, absolutely. This idea of immense potential that's waiting to express, and we are part of that. We are the agency of change, and that change is for the good of all of us.
I agree. Do you with your meditation practice, how much do you meditate daily?
Well, it could be like 4 hours a day. All these things depend on schedules, but yeah, like athletically, like if you're doing solo meditation or group meditations, something called sadhana shavir, which is truncated into sadhana severe by English-speaking people. Sadhana being meditation in the tantric sense. So people do their practices intensively. Like I could a minimum 40 minutes. These practices that I follow, that I was initiated into this yoga in Queens, New York, back in the winter of '89-'90, and I was at a global conference where all of these renunciant monks had gathered from all over the world to do their reporting and other kinds of duties related to their work. So I was meditating in rooms with like 30 or 40 of these senior monks, all wearing orange robes, and all of them, as I said, like they were all serious classical practitioners. It's sort of like the effect if you played in an orchestra, with 40 or 50 people in it, except it was composed of all these great musicians who kind of impact your music. So I received, by circumstances, I was there at the right time for that, and I was uplifted by being with those people. So the practice prepares the mind. It utilizes music. There's a tradition of music in there. There's a tradition called Prabhat Sangeet. And the composer's name is Prabhat Ranjan Sarkar. He's a Bengali, and he composed 5,000 musical works, complete works, with lyrics, dance, costume, like 5,000 works, complete works. That's more than Duke Ellington, right? That's more than the classical Western composers. He did it in 10 years while he was running a global organization. He did it in his spare time while he was combing his hair in the morning. He would recite the music, and the assistants would take the dictation and transcribe it. And this is how the body of work was created. So there was an incredible emphasis on music, in other words, in the practice, because there's this understanding about the acoustic resonance and the psychoacoustic effects. This is part of the classical yogic science, about the calibration, the sound calibration and consciousness, opening the gateways of consciousness through the calibration of sound. So Prabhat Sangeet is part of the practice. We'll sing these songs. And Esho, Esho, Amaridaye, like that. And the mind adapts to a waveform that's different than our active day-to-day waveform as we begin to calm down, and we get more into a flow that emphasizes long wavelengths with high amplitudes. And so we get slow. The mind slows and becomes stable, and then we get involved in something called kirtan, which is very popular in yogic circles. We sing a mantra called Baba Nam Kevalam, and you hear me singing Baba Nam Kevalam in UFO Canyon when we're at the UFO incident. I sing that a lot. I sing that a lot. In that moment, I remember the mantra more than I think about the UFO. I'm thinking about the universal spirit of the moment. Baba Nam Kevalam, Baba Nam Kevalamu. And we dance in a special way, in a circle, and so on. And there's all these procedures. So there's a very musical setup before we sit to meditate. And the meditation then is a classical practice that accomplishes the 8 limbs of Patanjali, which means it incorporates asana, prana, jama-niyama, pratyahara, pranayama, dharan, dhyan, and samadhi are all incorporated in the practice. It's an internal practice. It's taught by monks and nuns. So the women learn from the female renunciant practitioners, and the men learn from the men. So I had an acharya, a renunciant, who trained me in what are the 6 lessons of Sahaj Yoga, or the Raj Yoga. It's within that context. It's understood as the original teachings of Shiva, who is considered the patriarch of the entire yogic movement. So we're doing Shiva's meditation as it was taught 8,000 years ago. That's the contextual understanding. And I found the practices were extremely effective, to say the least. I had the classical experiences, and as a photographer, my portraiture includes the avatars of Vishnu. And I hold, having surveyed the internet for 10 years, I took these photos 10 years ago. Having surveyed the internet for 10 years, I haven't seen their duplicates anywhere. I hold this exclusive catalog. And one of the avatar photos is in that movie. You saw the face with the bird in the beginning of UFO Canyon?
Yes, I did.
That was striking?
Yes. Oh, it is. Oh, it's something. So I've never seen anything like it.
I have high resolution. I have a series of high resolution images of the avatars: the turtle Kurma, and the boar Varaha, and the lion man Narahari. These were given to me as educational tools to help to discuss these issues related to calibration, waveform, wavelength, and so on. They are expressions of the internal practice. It's the environment conforming to the consciousness, because those are classical designs. In the media is breath condensation in many of them. It's just my breath, but in the breath is the classical designs because I'm uttering the classical waveforms. Yeah, they're calibrated. So that the environment is capitulating to that form, and the link to the UFO contact is that the observer is seen in the video, is seen sending a light signal up into the sky, and then there's a response from the sky, call and response behavior, the bidirectional communications, and that is the expression of the same calibration type. Expression that the environment is conforming to the mind. The mind is not conforming to the environment. The environment is conforming to the mind. It's the mind and its composition is dictating the outcome. So why do I emphasize consciousness studies in UFO contact? Because I said the contents of the mind is where the results are going to come from. this is quite an esoteric subject. I'm presenting today that I have evidence in support of my claim. I have a lot of evidence, and it's very substantial, and it's been scrutinized at least minimally by academics here in the Lower Mainland. But the most important point is that the figures in the images are so clearly and portrayed in such high resolution that even children, who are still like ankle biters, can see the faces right away. Now, I have a number of these. I have a number of these on my Facebook page. So my friends on Facebook who go into my photo albums and look for tantric artworks in my Facebook photo albums, or go to the cover photos. Yeah, the tantric artworks are the cover photos, and then you'll see maybe 20, 25 from my collection of stills.
And they're so striking. Like I said, I've never seen anything like that. It is truly phenomenal. What is your next? I mean, you're going to be, continuing to edit your videos and take grand adventures and connect with people and come to Utah. What other fun? I know exactly, and that sounds like a great time to me. But where else? What else are you going to be doing in the upcoming future? Are you going to be anywhere we can hear you talk?
Well, I anticipate I will be doing more radio interviews this year. But in terms of live presentations, I don't. It's not clear to me yet where I may be giving any live presentations. But again, there's 12 months ahead. I have not been booked to any festivals or conferences, although it could happen. So if anyone's interested in, if people want to see this on a speaking, in a speaking venue or forum, they could approach me to discuss that, because I think, again, the work that that I'm cultivating and I'm the custodian of has great value to society, and it's my duty is to make sure that the public has an opportunity to survey it. Certainly, yes, I'll be continuing my private practice. My website, yourinnervoice.com, is where people reach me for my clinical work, and so I'll be continuing to provide services to folks who seek me for counseling services and insight. Because of my proficiency in these speech studies, where I'm able to decrypt the unconscious voice, it's been lauded as a very valuable tool by professionals in the mental health field.
This just sounds absolutely fascinating to me. We could have you back for another 5-hour show, but tell us a little bit, give us a brief snippet about what that entails.
Private sessions are conducted remotely by telephone or by Skype. So from the comfort of your home or office, I will interview you for 5 to 10 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. In just a brief introductory sample, I will record your voice, and in that interview I will study to produce maybe half a dozen or more messages from my findings, and I will share the audio with you, and you will listen with me to each of the messages, and when we will go through each of the messages in detail, and we will find that there will be multiple points of relatedness between personal experience and what the transcript tells us. What the messages say will report facts from our personal experience that we can vet. And then there will be other mystery subjects that will also appear. And we'll be invited to consider that if there's 3 or 4 points of correspondence to fact in the transcript, that this other mysterious stuff may also have truth for us as well. So people use this approach most commonly is to resolve trauma. I have clients who have have huge missing chunks of their personal history due typically to trauma, and they are attempting to recover like lost memory and so on. And the forensic detail of what comes up in their transcripts is profound. We get the first names of significant individuals from their childhood and places, very detailed descriptions, all sorts of stuff. It's really profound. And I also, in the UFO field, again, UFO Canyon shows that I apply the same approach to the testimony of the witnesses. We take the live recordings from the field during the contact events, and we can use the same analytic procedure. Dr. Hynek famously said in one of his books that Project Blue Book, for which he was the federal government's astronomer scientist, he was the federal government UFO scientist of his day. He said the whole thing was a whitewash, and he said one of the reasons he knew this was because there was no innovation in approaches to testimony of the witnesses. He anticipated that there would be new ways to decrypt what the witnesses were saying about their experiences, And in the 21st century, I appear as a person with proficiency and with a demonstrated track record for precision accuracy in military grade, medical grade. I mean, my bona fides are really good in this field. So I appear and I say we can apply the same approach to the UFO witnesses, and we can decrypt incredible amounts of information out of the contactees, out of the abductees, using this method without any hypnosis. So it's a simple conversation. It's just that our words are laden with so much more information, and this procedure starts to tease it out, and we start to engage it in a direct way. And when we receive that feedback from our unconscious, it's like listening to ourselves sleep talk. When we receive the feedback, we begin to change. So a person, hypothetically, a person could come and say, I want to get over my inhibitions about UFO contact so I can have better contact. I want to improve my performance. I want to get through all the inhibitors, the fears, whatever that's bothering me. And I say, okay, we'll just record you talking about it. I'll find your deep fears, and we'll explore them together. You'll hear your own voice talking about them, and we'll work them through. People from the mental health field say that we can have catharsis in one session with this procedure. Catharsis in one session, this is really revolutionary, because the typical model for counseling as applied by psychologists and psychiatrists could have people in there once a week for 7 years without any resolution, because those models are discovery-based, because the model perceives that we will constantly be at the learner stage. We'll be like children. It's sort of like the UFO skeptic, that posits the public as childlike, and that they will never reach adulthood. You see, adults possess wisdom. Children are naive, but adults are wise because they learn from experience. They learn. The skeptics posit that we will never learn our lessons, but I say that we will become wise. It's our destiny to become wise. We will know. We will be the adult people, not the children in these situations. So, again, this methodology is field tested. It's been audited on camera by CBS Television for their news, and it's withstood all these tests. It withstood all the tests of time. This research did better than a lot of other endeavors in the same period of time. It did really well. And so I encourage people who are interested in coaching and counseling to find out about it. If they're practitioners or if they're seeking support services, they should absolutely find out about this practice and participate. I say that this is historic work, and the people who participate in it are the people who are the people of the future, because they're breaking down the walls and the barriers, the inhibitors, performance and success. They're breaking it down, and we're doing it acoustically. It's safe. There's no hypnosis. It's just sound. It's just that sound is so potent. The yogis understood that, and this practice demonstrates it.
Yes, and that is so great. And you're going to look out your window tomorrow, and I'm going to be there because I'm just moving up there. I want to hang out with you.
Supernatural.
I mean, it's just so fun to talk with you, and like I said, thank you so much for rolling with my first show on Blog Talk Radio. We're definitely getting the kinks out there, but what a fascinating conversation. I love it. Thank you so much.
Congratulations on your start here at Blog Talk. I hope it's very successful for you.
Well, you know what? I definitely have learned a few things tonight, but like I said, I'll be outside with my stones banging them together. So hopefully that'll help. But it's just really, it's fun, and I hope that people will go to yourinnervoice.com and to support you and with your work. And I know you'll be doing groundbreaking things like always. You have been fabulous, and I really look forward to getting to know you and to have you down here and connecting. So thank you very, very much.
I feel very fortunate to make a connection with you, and I look forward to our further talks.